The rains of the Sara Prime never ceased, and neither did the emptiness that had settled into Marcus Chun's bones like sediment. For 4 years the silence had been his only companion, not the peaceful quiet of meditation, but the hollow absence of voices, laughter, the sounds that made a place feel alive. Even within the biodome where machines hummed their mechanical lullabies and genetically modified vines whispered against reinforced glass. The stillness pressed against his consciousness like a weight. 4 years since the Terran Council had stripped him of his credentials, loaded him onto a transport, and branded his name with bureaucratic disgrace. Xenobotanist Marcus Chen, exiled under Protocol 7.8, unauthorized development of sentient plant networks. The tribunal hadn't needed lengthy explanations, no prison sentence, just shame, public censure, and then the offer: disappear quietly. To the Sara Prime, maintain the research station, stay useful, stay forgotten. So he had come, and the dome had flourished under his care. Now bioluminescent moss cascaded down the irrigation walls, hybrid ferns stretched toward artificial dawnlight, and pale bark trees reached upward into the synthetic sky. It was his garden and his cage. Marcus knelt beside a cluster of protein pods, adjusting the mineral flow with practiced precision. Loosen the connector, regulate the stream, clean the residue, everything methodical, everything documented. Order was the barrier that kept the silence from consuming him entirely. Then he noticed them: 4 nutrient bulbs missing from the central growing tower. No native creature could have reached that height. The moss beneath showed clear impressions, small, barefoot, deliberate. His pulse quickened. This had happened twice before this week. Each morning he left supplemental food. Each morning it vanished. 3 days ago, he'd caught a glimpse of her, a child with silver blue skin and hair like spun moonlight, no taller than his waist, watching him from behind the hydroponic tanks with eyes that glowed like captured starlight. She hadn't spoken, just melted back into the undergrowth. He hadn't reported it, couldn't, not to the council, not after what they did, to beings they deemed unregistered. Instead, he left more food. This morning felt different. The proximity sensors chimed once, a soft pulse indicating movement in the northern sector. Not wind, not automated systems. Something bipedal. 2 heat signatures. Marcus froze. He carried no weapons, just the worn cultivation tool at his belt and a basic medical kit. Then came the sound, bare feet pattering across wet moss, followed by a musical laugh. "Hello, plant keeper." Marcus spun around. She stood just inside this dome's warm glow, thin, damp, grinning. Her silver blue skin shimmered beneath the mist, and her long pale hair clung to her shoulders like liquid silk. A woven pouch hung at her side, and her enormous violet eyes sparkled with fearless curiosity. "I brought someone," she whispered conspiratorially. "I told Mother you're not scary." Marcus remained motionless as she skipped 2 steps closer, tilting her head. "You remember me, right? I'm Zara." Then he saw her mother emerging from the shadows, tall, graceful despite obvious exhaustion. The woman's platinum hair was braided but disheveled, her silver blue skin marked with fading bioluminescent patterns that spoke of nobility lost. Her garments were patched and mud-stained, clinging to her legs from the eternal rain. She leaned slightly on her daughter while trying to hide it. Zara beamed. "This is my mother." The woman stepped forward and dropped to one knee. "My name is Lyanna," she said quietly, her voice carrying musical vowels and soft consonants of an off-world accent. She kept her head bowed as rain drummed against the dome overhead. "I have no legal status. My child is unregistered. If the council discovers us, they will take her." Her voice caught. "She will be rehabilitated, mind-wiped, remade. She won't be Zara anymore." Marcus said nothing, but he listened. I was once part of the celestial houses, Lyanna continued. Then I bore a child without sanctioned bonding. Her father died in the mining wars before her birth. I was cast out, marked. She touched her collarbone where faded glyphs pulsed weakly beneath her skin. I've been running for years. You're the only one I could approach. Her hands trembled. Slightly. Under Terran law, a cross-species union grants temporary asylum. If I'm bonded to you, even contractually, my child becomes protected. She gains a name that cannot be erased. Lyanna lifted her head at last, revealing silver eyes hollowed by fatigue and desperation. Please, you don't need to love me. You don't need to touch me. Just give her a future that the Council cannot delete. Zara stepped closer, unbothered by her mother's tension. She reached into her pouch and produced a smooth, polished stone the color of deep space. This is for you, she said, offering it with small hands. For sharing your garden fruits. Marcus looked down at her earnest face, then at the stone that held no monetary value but meant everything. She tilted her head up. Can I stay? I can help with the growing. I'm not afraid of the soil worms. Marcus exhaled slowly, his breath unsteady. He didn't speak immediately. Instead, he crouched low, soaking his knees in the moss, bringing himself to their level. He studied Lyanna, this proud, broken woman who refused to beg even while clearly desperate, and the bright, persistent girl who carried joy like captured sunlight. He had chosen exile, chosen solitude. But perhaps the dome had been waiting for something else all along. You and Zara can stay, he said softly. If the bonding protects her, I'll sign whatever documents they require. But I'm not doing this to erase bureaucratic records. He extended his hand toward Lyanna, not touching, just offering an open palm between them. I'm doing this because no child should have to hide to exist. Lyanna stared at his hand, her shoulders trembling almost imperceptibly. Then she reached out, hesitating only a heartbeat before placing her fingers lightly over his. Zara squealed with delight and threw her arms around his neck without waiting. Mother, does this mean I can sleep in the glowing flower chamber? She asked. It smells like warm starlight. Marcus smiled a rare expression. The girl's warmth in his arms was startling. Yes, he murmured, you can sleep there. Above them, the dome's lighting shifted, mimicking the break of dawn. A subtle flicker appeared in Marcus's peripheral HUD display satellite drift, no incoming vessels yet. But a soft warning pulsed once. Passive council scan, proximity registered. He dismissed the alert. Later. For now, they were safe. For now, the dome was full of life, and for the first time in years, so was he. Chapter 2. The auxiliary quarters hadn't housed anyone in 18 months. Marcus opened the access panel and stepped aside as Lyanna hesitated at the threshold. The room beyond was compact but functional. 2 sleeping mats folded against the far wall. A sanitation station with working filtration and a heating element embedded in the flooring. Dust clung to the corners like memories. Zara had fallen asleep against his shoulder during the walk, exhausted from excitement and recovery. Marcus carefully placed her on the smaller mat, where she curled instinctively onto her side, one small fist tucked beneath her cheek. Lyanna crossed the room slowly, moving with practiced silence. She knelt beside her daughter and touched the girl's forehead with the back of her fingers, her thumb brushing a small bruise near Zara's temple that Marcus hadn't noticed before. The gesture seemed ritualistic, protective. She hasn't eaten warm food in weeks, Lyanna murmured. Marcus nodded once. I'll prepare something. In the small galley, he worked methodically. Water purification, heating coils, nutrient paste mixed with protein supplement. Not gourmet cuisine, but warm, clean, and life-sustaining. When he returned, Lyanna hadn't moved from her daughters. She accepted the bowl with trembling hands, lifting it carefully. Steam rose around her face, softening the sharp lines of exhaustion. When she took the first sip, the sound she made was barely audible, a small catch in her throat, somewhere between breath and sob. "I haven't tasted warmth in so long," she whispered. Marcus sat across from her on the polymer floor. "I know it's not much. It's more than most places offer," she replied, finishing the soup in reverent silence. When she set the empty bowl aside, her shoulders sagged just slightly enough to be noticed. Marcus leaned back, resting on one elbow as Zara's soft breathing filled the space between them. "How long were you watching the station?" he asked. Lyanna looked up, her silver eyes calmer now but still wary. 4 weeks. We sheltered near the thermal caves by the southern ridge, only approached at night. "Why now?" She hesitated. "Because we ran out of time." Marcus didn't press, but the tension in her voice made it clear whatever pursued them wasn't just hunger or weather. He watched her adjust Zara's blanket again, her fingers pausing at a faint mark. Beneath the fabric, an old scar deliberately placed. Did someone hurt her? His jaw tightened. Lyanna didn't look up. Not since we left celestial space. Before that, punishment was common for both of us. She said it with no emotion, as if the weight had long since turned to stone inside her. Marcus swallowed the sharp taste in his throat. "You came to the one man the council forgot. Smart." "You're not forgotten," Lyanna said, surprising him. "You're monitored." He looked at her sharply. She met his gaze, unblinking. "There was a scan Pulse Council sourced 2 days ago. They were mapping this quadrant," Marcus exhaled slowly. "I detected it too." "You should assume we were followed," she added. "It's what I would do." A long silence settled between them. Finally, she shifted position. "Why did you say yes? You didn't even hesitate." "I did," Marcus said. "You just didn't see it." Lyanna tilted her head, waiting. "I've spent 4 years pretending this dome was justice," he said. "Like I deserved it, a clean exile, no chains, just plants and silence." He looked down at his own hands. "But then a child appeared out of nowhere, barefoot and hungry, and trusted me with a pretty stone. That kind of faith doesn't happen often." Her expression softened. "Besides," he added, "the council wouldn't waste a trap on someone like me. They already won." Lyanna stared at him for a long moment, then stood without warning. "I need to clean myself before I contaminate this place further." Marcus pointed toward the adjoining washroom. Running water, sanitary agents labeled in standard, and celestial tongues. She hesitated at the door, her hand gripping the frame tightly. "Do you have spare clothes?" "Not your size, but I'll find something that works." When she emerged later, her skin was no longer dulled by grime, and her platinum hair fell in damp waves down her back. She wore a repurposed station shirt and drawstring. Pants too loose but infinitely better than rags. Her markings, faint bioluminescent traces along her collarbone and temples, were clearer now though still faded. "You didn't have to prepare a room for us," she said. "I didn't," Marcus replied. "It was already here, waiting." She studied him in the quiet. "Then you think you're the only one who lost something?" "I don't," Marcus said. "I think we both lost too much to ever be the same." She gave him a look sharp, appraising, then nodded. Once and lowered herself carefully to the other sleeping mat. It wasn't trust, not yet, but she didn't position herself near the door dot as the dome lights dimmed to mimic night. A low pulse echoed through the environmental systems, too faint for alarms. Another scan pulse, council frequency, 1 degree closer than before. Marcus disabled the log and darkened the display. Outside, the rain began again, soft and endless against the glass. Inside, for the first time in years, the silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like Sanctuary. Chapter 3 morning arrived with gentle awakening, no system alerts, no automated announcements, just the slow transition from night to day as the Sara Prime's biodome shifted cycles. Light warmed from amber to pale gold, filtering through condensation-laced glass and casting soft shadows across the floor. Marcus was already awake, seated on the observation bench near the eastern cultivation beds, nursing synthetic tea that tasted faintly of mint and metal. The humidity had risen overnight. He'd need to recalibrate the moisture dispersal before midday or the root systems would develop fungal growth. Normally, he would have addressed it immediately, but this morning he found himself pausing. For the first time in years, he wasn't alone, and the silence around him wasn't empty, it was peaceful. From behind the corridor partition came a soft sound, a sleepy yawn followed by the gentle pad of bare feet against tile. Zara appeared in the doorway, hair wild from sleep, one hand rubbing her eyes while the other clutched a faded cloth. She must have held through the night. She spotted Marcus and beamed. "You're still here." "I live here," Marcus replied with a slight smile. She trotted over, dropped the cloth, and leaned against his knee as if she'd done it countless times before. "The sleeping pad was soft. I thought maybe we dream traveled." "No dream," he said, "just real insulation and actual heat." She blinked up at him. "I didn't have dreams, only warm." She said it as if warmth was a sensation as rare and wondrous as flight. Marcus felt something constrict in his chest. He set down the mug. "Are you hungry?" Zara nodded enthusiastically, her hair floating. "Yes, but not squishy soup again." "My tongue doesn't like it," Marcus chuckled. Noted. As he prepared a basic starch protein blend and heated some fruit preserve, Zara wandered off, humming tunelessly. He watched her skip through the corridor with arms outstretched like wings, whispering to herself and stopping to examine everything: light panels, ventilation grills, a scattered cluster of seed pods that had fallen from his work pouch. She treated each discovery like it had fallen from another universe. His protective instincts activated, cataloging her movements, posture, energy levels. She was thin, but her coloring had improved, breathing clear, eyes focused. Not sick, not yet. When he turned back toward the meal preparation, Lyanna was there. She stood in the doorway with damp hair braided back, her posture still alert, but her expression softer than the previous night. "You let her explore," she said, not accusing. "More surprised than anything. She's 5, Marcus said. "Curiosity is part of the programming." Lyanna entered slowly, her movements carrying that same quiet precision, as though she were always conserving energy, always prepared to flee. Marcus handed her a bowl of the same mixture he'd made for Zara. She accepted it with a nod. "You didn't have to cook. You didn't have to save your daughter by trusting a stranger," Marcus replied evenly. They ate in companionable silence. Zara returned and sat cross-legged on the bench, nose wrinkling at the food but still eating with both hands. Her appetite was genuine now. Lyanna watched her for a moment, then set her bowl aside. "She's never been in a space this large where the walls don't record everything." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You mean surveillance?" Lyanna nodded. "In celestial society, all public areas transmit movement and sound to upper caste monitors. Even breathing incorrectly can be marked against you. She doesn't act like someone raised under that kind of scrutiny." "She wasn't," Lyanna said. "I fled with her before she could walk. We've been moving ever since caves, abandoned outposts, derelict stations. She's adaptable. She's too young to understand what fear should feel like." Marcus glanced at Zara, who was now attempting to lick fruit, preserved from the bowl's edge. Lyanna's gaze followed, and something flickered in her expression: regret, perhaps envy. "Last night," she said quietly, "I didn't sleep until I could hear your breathing from the hallway. I noticed you don't trust us either. Marcus turned to her. I trust what I observe. You protect her like someone who's lost too much. She trusts like someone who's never been betrayed. Lyanna flinched, a small shift, but visible. She turned away, running her thumb across the table's edge. I don't know how long we can remain here. You must realize that. I do, and you still let us in. I'm not sure that was a decision, Marcus said. More like inevitability. Lyanna didn't answer, but she didn't look away either. Zara broke the silence. Mother, can I show him the glowing leaf? Lyanna blinked. Which one? The one in the moss chamber with the tiny lights. It tickled me last night. Marcus stood. You mean the pink leaf cluster? That chamber's warmest this time of day. He extended his hand to the girl. Lead the way. Zara took his hand with absolute confidence and skipped ahead, pulling him down the central corridor past irrigation lines and growth tanks. The chamber she led him to was one of the original bio-encapsulation rooms, used during early terraforming for atmospheric testing. Now it was a dense jungle of microflora, glowing fronds, spore-releasing vines, and bioluminescent particles drifting like dandelions in the filtered light. She gasped as though seeing it for the first time. It's a jungle celebration. Marcus laughed softly. That's one way to describe it. He knelt beside her, pointing at one of the pulse lights shifting color in a leaf cluster. See that? It changes when it senses moisture on your skin, like a greeting. Zara touched it and squealed as it shimmered from pink to soft blue beneath her fingers. It likes me. Lyanna appeared in the doorway, watching with arms folded. She wasn't tense anymore, just quiet, perhaps wondering how a dome built for isolation had become the safest place she'd seen in years. Marcus stood, brushing soil from his knees. He met her gaze. You're not a burden here. This place was never meant to be empty. And yet, Lyanna stepped forward slowly, you kept it that way. Because I thought I was supposed to. She tilted her head. And now? He hesitated. Now I'm wondering if exile isn't the worst place to begin again. Zara laughed behind them, chasing a glowing beetle along the moss path. The biolights pulsed brighter for just a moment, a heartbeat in the dome. From somewhere above, the scanner array issued a faint click, background hum shifting. Marcus glanced toward the overhead display near the door. Another passive scan. Pulse, higher frequency. Council systems were getting closer. He looked back at Lyanna. She detected it too. She didn't panic, didn't move, but her jaw set slightly. Marcus nodded once no words exchanged. She understood. They had time, but not forever. And yet, standing here in the filtered jungle light with a glowing child playing between them, it felt sufficient for now. Chapter 4. The storm arrived without warning. Marcus had barely registered the pressure shift. When the dome's integrity alarms chimed softly, a low-frequency pulse that reverberated through the floor like the heartbeat of a restless planet. He checked the nearest terminal, frowning as orange-coded alerts flickered across the screen. Moisture overload, pressure deviation in Section E, he muttered. Perfect timing. He pulled on his boots, grabbed his toolkit, and shrugged a utility vest over his shirt. As he headed for the corridor, Lyanna intercepted him, one arm wrapped in a clean cloth. You felt it? She asked, her expression already sharp. Pressure sensors are detecting instability in the western greenhouse. I need to reset the dehumidifier valves manually before fungal growth spreads. I'll come. Marcus hesitated. I know how to use tools, Lyanna added, already securing the wrap around her wrist. And you'll work faster with assistance. She wasn't. Wrong. He nodded once, and they moved quickly down the service corridor, boots echoing against metal flooring as distant thunder rumbled against the dome's reinforced skin. not real thunder, atmospheric vibration from the storm front passing over the Sara Prime surface. The terraforming outside hadn't finished stabilizing, so localized electrical storms often sparked above the dome, lashing energy against the protective panels. In the greenhouse's far wing, hybrid vines trembled with residual static as Marcus pried open the floor access hatch. Moist air rushed out, heavy and sour. "Humidity is above 70%, he said. "If it climbs higher, the root clusters will collapse." Lyanna crouched beside him. "Which valves?" Marcus pointed. "The two on the right. I'll take the far one." She slid past him without hesitation. He watched her longer than necessary, her movements clean, precise, not tentative. She wasn't nobility anymore, but her posture hadn't forgotten where she came from. They worked in silence for several minutes. The hiss of tools and soft rattle of shifting panels their only soundtrack. The air grew thicker, charged with static and unspoken thoughts. Finally, Lyanna broke it. "You maintain this place like it's your penance." Marcus didn't look up. "Isn't it?" "No," she said simply. "Penance implies guilt. But I've only seen care. In how you touch things, you love this place." "I did once," he admitted. "Now I think I love what it allows me to forget." A long pause followed, then her voice lowered. "What did you do?" He tightened a coupling before answering. "I modified a photosynthetic neural algorithm. It wasn't approved for deployment, but it worked too well." She glanced over. The roots developed early sentient responses, faster than expected. They started reacting to stimuli in coordinated ways, patterns, rhythms. Consciousness. I don't know, but the council panicked. They shut the trial down, deemed it biologically unethical. And you fought them. I didn't think they had the right to decide what counted as life just because it made them uncomfortable. She leaned back on her heels. "So they erased you." "Not erased, just removed quietly. Without chains, without trials. Just exile." Lyanna tilted her head. "You could have run too." "Like I did. I didn't want to be chased. I wanted to disappear." She absorbed that in silence. Rain began to hammer the dome harder, the echoes trembling down through the glass like distant artillery. "Do you regret it?" she asked. Marcus paused mid-motion. "Every day. I think I do, until I realize what kind of man I'd have to be not to." Lyanna exhaled slowly, her voice quieter now. "They killed Zara's father before she was born, not for any crime. Just for touching a noble's daughter without permission." She didn't cry. Her voice didn't crack. But her hands clenched tighter around the tool in her lap. "I thought if I ran far enough, fast enough, I could make her invisible. But she shines too brightly. They always find us." Marcus set his wrench down, looked across the shaft between them. "You don't have to run anymore." "I do," she said, her gaze flat. "You've given us time, but the council doesn't forget. One scan too many, and they'll send someone. Someone who won't be deterred by soil or sanctuary. We'll find a way." She studied him. "You still say we like it means something." "It does." Her eyes held his a second longer, then dropped. Marcus stood first, offering his hand. This time she didn't hesitate. Her fingers slid into his palm, warm, firm. She rose with his help, their closeness lingering a second longer than necessary. The rain above surged again, drumming with renewed force. He pulled the hatch shut and reset the seal. The greenhouse lights blinked once, then steadied. "That should stabilize the pressure," he said. "We'll monitor overnight." Lyanna nodded. As they returned to the main corridor, she slowed near the water collection tanks and brushed her fingers along the algae bloom hugging the edge. "You make things grow," she murmured, "even in exile." Marcus said nothing, but he watched her. Way her shoulders no longer hunched as much. The way she walked as though the floor beneath her could be trusted. Later, when they returned to the living quarters, Zara was curled on the bench with a thermal blanket tucked beneath her chin and a seed pod in her hand. She'd fallen asleep mid-sentence, mid-story, in the middle of a world that had for now stopped hunting her. Lyanna knelt beside her daughter. Marcus turned to leave, but her voice caught him. She said, "You smell like tree bark and warm air." "She means it kindly." Marcus smiled faintly. "That's better than what most humans called me before." She looked up at him. "And what do you call yourself now?" "I don't know yet." Her gaze didn't shift. "Maybe we'll both figure it out." He lingered in the doorway, watching as she gently untangled a curl from Zara's face. Her touch was careful, reverent. He didn't say good night. He just stepped out, letting the quiet return. Outside, the storm had begun moving eastward, its roar fading into a low hum. Inside the dome, the air was thick with growth, with the scent of clean soil and warming trust. Marcus sat in the observation room again, not to watch the monitors, but to listen. For once, the silence didn't accuse. It waited, like something slowly awakening. Chapter 5. The day began with stillness, but something in the atmosphere felt wrong. Marcus noticed it first when he passed the living quarters. Zara, who normally greeted morning with excited questions and barefoot exploration, wasn't awake. The door remained half closed, light spilling dimly across the floor. No humming, no laughter, no sign of her usual mischief. He paused at the threshold, listening. Inside, Lyanna sat on the edge of the cot, her posture rigid. Zara was curled in her lap, wrapped in the thermal blanket, small limbs limp beneath the folds. Her skin had lost its shimmer, dull now, almost gray-blue at the temples. Her cheeks were flushed in uneven patches, and her breathing came too quickly. "She didn't wake," Lyanna said without looking up. "Not once during the night." Marcus entered immediately, scanning her from a distance, eyes, skin, pulse, respiratory rhythm. "How long has her fever been climbing?" "Since before sunrise." She was shivering, then started sweating. Lyanna's voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed the fear behind her calm. "I gave her a hydration patch. It didn't hold. Let me examine her." Lyanna didn't resist. She shifted slightly so Marcus could crouch beside her and run the scanner over the girl's small frame. The diagnostic readout blinked: elevated internal temperature, dehydration stage 2, nutrient absorption failure, systemic immune lag. Marcus muttered under his breath, "Damn it, what does it mean?" Her body's rejecting the synthetic food. Could be residual from celestial immune design, maybe too long on raw rations, or her hybrid physiology stressing her uptake functions. "Can you treat it?" "I can stabilize her, but we'll need real food. Actual enzymes, proteins she can absorb. We have fruits, leaf paste. You grow everything in this place. For humans, yes. For her, we're guessing." Lyanna went still. Marcus stood and crossed to the cold storage unit, pulling out a sealed nutrient block. He broke it open, mixed it with warmed mineral broth, and added a stem enzyme meant to restart sluggish digestive responses. It was a gamble, but their only option. Zara groaned softly as Lyanna coaxed her upright. Her eyes fluttered, open, glassy. Unfocused, she whimpered once. "It hurts in my belly." Lyanna pressed her lips to the girl's forehead, then gently tipped the bowl to her mouth. "Sip for me, Zara. Just a little." The girl tried. The first swallow triggered a gag reflex, and Lyanna's arms tensed around her. Marcus stepped in quickly with a cloth, catching the spillage and checking her pulse again. They spent the next hour cycling heat modulation, hydration patches, and microdoses. Zara faded in and out, sometimes whispering fragments of dreams or past memories, names Marcus didn't recognize. Fragments of cave shadows and scents that didn't belong to this place. It was nearing midday when Lyanna finally broke. She stood and moved to the far wall, gripping the edge of the shelf. Her hands were shaking. Marcus watched as she struggled to steady them. I've kept her alive through poison storms, through weeks without food. But now, in a place with walls and heat and medicine, this is where she starts to fade. Marcus didn't answer. He knew there was nothing he could say to make that feel right. Lyanna turned around, face pale with fury and helplessness. Don't tell me this is better. That exile was worth it. That hiding in this dome with a stranger was the right choice. He stood from where he was kneeling and met her eyes. I won't tell you any of that. But I will tell you this. If she were anywhere else right now, she'd already be gone. Lyanna flinched, jaw clenching. She turned away, swallowing hard. Marcus stepped closer. You think this place is weakness, but it's held 4 years of storms without breaking. It's not just soil and glass, it's designed to adapt. She's not part of your design, Lyanna whispered. She's not part of anything, Marcus said softly. She is now. They stood in silence. Zara stirred behind them, muttering something in her sleep that sounded like flower room. Lyanna moved to her daughter, knelt beside her, brushing hair from her face. She wants to sleep in the glowing chamber. She might rest easier there, Marcus said. The light triggers circadian response, might soothe her neural signals. Can we move her safely? With help. Together, they wrapped Zara in soft insulation and gently carried her through the warm corridors toward the old Terra vault. The moment the heat sensors triggered the light panels, the room flooded with soft pink glow. Hybrid vines shimmered in the filtered air. The room pulsed gently, like a heartbeat made of petals. Zara sighed a soft sound. Her limbs relaxed just slightly. They settled her on the thermal mat Marcus retrieved from storage. Lyanna knelt beside her, adjusting the blanket just right, her hands never leaving the girl's frame. Marcus stood near the door, unsure whether to speak. But Lyanna looked up. I used to think children were born into the world with no say in their fate, she said. Now I wonder if she chose me, if somehow she knew. Maybe, Marcus said quietly. Or maybe she's teaching you to survive in a way you weren't allowed to before. Lyanna looked back down, brushing a stray lock from Zara's cheek. She's stronger than I am. Marcus hesitated, then stepped closer. You're the reason she's still breathing. For a long moment, Lyanna didn't move. Then, very slowly, she reached out and took Marcus's hand. She didn't look at him, just held on. Not for him, for herself, for the moment, for something she couldn't name yet. Marcus let her. The room was quiet, the light still pulsing, the air warm and full of breath and slow healing. They stayed like that until Zara's breathing steadied, until her brow cooled, until Lyanna's grip loosened not in weakness but in trust. And for the first time since her arrival, she fell asleep beside someone else without fear. Chapter 6. The storm had passed, but Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something worse was approaching. He stood at the edge of the dome's main console station, eyes fixed on the long-range telemetry feed. For the past 5 days, the Council's passive scans had hovered just beyond the safety margin, brief, random pulses that could be dismissed as routine. But this wasn't routine. A new signal had just appeared, stronger, focused. Not a probe or ambient relay. It was a beacon pulse, intentional, triangulated. Marcus stared at the screen as the data assembled itself. Vessel approaching. Unregistered drive pattern, Council-class chassis. Estimated arrival, 43 minutes. He didn't curse or slam. His fist on the console. He simply stood there, one hand gripping the workstation's edge as though he could steady himself against what was coming. Marcus, Lyanna's voice was soft behind him, but alert. She stepped into the room, her expression shifting the moment she saw his face. "What is it?" He turned to her slowly. "A ship. Not a supply vessel, not a patrol drone. Something Council engineered. And unscheduled." Lyanna's breath caught. "They found us." She was already moving, gathering their belongings, checking for her blade, eyes darting toward the corridor. "We can run." Marcus stepped in front of her. "There's nowhere to run, Lyanna. The Sara Prime is open terrain and frozen ridges for over 100 kilometers in every direction. You wouldn't make it 2 days with Zara like this." Lyanna froze. "Even if she could walk," Marcus added gently, "the cold would kill her faster than the Council." Lyanna's hands dropped, fists clenched at her sides. "Then what do you suggest?" "I don't just keep this place alive," Marcus said. "I designed it, modified it." She narrowed her eyes. "What does that mean?" He stepped back toward the terminal and opened a hidden console menu, something buried under layers of obsolete diagnostic protocols. The screen shifted, revealing a schematic Lyanna had never seen before. "It means there's a level of subroot access in this dome that wasn't reported to the Council. I built it after my exile began defense systems, identity cloaking, radiation camouflage. It was my insurance policy in case they ever decided to take even this away from me." Lyanna stepped closer. "Can you hide us?" "I can try. But it won't hold if they physically breach the dome. Once they're inside, all bets are off." Lyanna's face was unreadable. Her voice, when it came, was steady. "Then we can't let them in." Marcus didn't respond. The weight of what she was suggesting wasn't lost on either of them. From the corridor, Zara called out sleepily, her voice thin. "Mother?" Lyanna turned and vanished down the hallway without another word. Marcus followed more slowly. Zara was sitting up, cheeks pale but cooler than they'd been the day before. Her eyes found Marcus, then her mother. "Did I wake the plants again?" she asked. They were all glowing too much. Lyanna sat beside her. "No, little star, you're safe." Zara smiled faintly and closed her eyes again. She didn't have the strength to stay awake long. Marcus turned to the wall console and activated the dome's emergency protocol sequence. Outside, the light in the biodome shifted subtly, photosynthetic panels dimming to mimic nocturnal shutdown, pulse emitters reducing their electromagnetic footprint. Inside the command console, the artificial ID signature switched from Marcus Chun, terraformer, to Dome 7, vacant, maintenance required. A blank shell dot might work. It had to. Lyanna returned to the control room and stood beside him. Her hair was still slightly damp from the mist cycles, her arms crossed, not defensively, but in tension, like a held breath. "If they land, will you lie to them?" "Yes," Marcus said without hesitation. "Will you lie well?" Marcus looked at her. "They exiled me for telling the truth. I've had 4 years to get better at the alternative." Lyanna stared at him, the corners of her mouth twitching with something close to respect or perhaps sorrow. "If they find her, they won't. But if they do," Marcus didn't look away, "then I'll claim her as mine." Lyanna stiffened. "That would make you a traitor to the Council." "I was already a traitor when I let something live they wanted dead." Silence stretched between them. She broke it with a whisper. "Why are you doing this?" "Because you and your daughter are the first things in 4 years that made me feel human again." Lyanna stepped closer. "You'd risk everything for a child that isn't yours?" Marcus's voice was quieter now. "She's here. That's enough." There was a long pause. Then, with slow deliberation, Lyanna reached for him, not hesitating this time, not testing. She touched his face, fingers feather-light against the rough line of his jaw. "She's not the only one you've saved," she said. Then she leaned in and kissed him. It wasn't desperate or possessive. It wasn't even long. But it was real, anchored in everything they hadn't said until now. A promise made with breath and skin, not words. When she pulled back, she didn't apologize. The terminal behind them chimed. Once. Vessel entering upper atmosphere, ETA 19 minutes. They both turned to the screen. Marcus breathed out slowly. Time to decide who we're going to be. Lyanna's eyes were bright. We already did. Together, they stepped toward the future, whatever form it would take. And behind them, in the soft pink glow of the flower chamber, a little girl dreamed without fear. Chapter 7. The Council lander touched down with surgical precision, no wasted motion, no flourish, just the blunt metallic inevitability of authority arriving where it wasn't welcome. From the observation alcove, Marcus watched the vessel's heat shimmer ripple across the outer moss layer as the landing strut sank into the softened ground. The dome's camouflage had held for precisely 18 minutes past their estimated scan. Arrival. That bought them time, not safety. He wasn't alone in the alcove. Lyanna stood beside him, arms crossed, her posture composed but tight with the kind of stillness that came from years of running. Below them, Zara slept in the insulated medical pod near the base of the flower vault, still recovering but finally stable. The pink light of the flora pulsed gently around her like a second heartbeat. They'll be inside within 10 minutes, Marcus said, tone low and precise. Will the identity scrambler hold? Until they step through the door. After that, they'll want visuals, DNA records, scans. He paused. They'll be looking for you, and you're still ready to lie? I don't need to. Lie, Marcus said, turning toward her. I just need to make them believe something close enough to the truth. She studied him. And if they don't? I'll keep buying time until you and Zara are clear. There's a secondary tunnel beneath the utility trench. It was meant for waste runoff, never mapped. You built an escape route. I built an endgame, Marcus said quietly. I just didn't know who it would be for. A long silence passed between them. Then Lyanna reached up, touching the side of his face with the same certainty she'd once reserved for protecting her daughter. No hesitation, no fear. I'm not leaving you, she said. We decide together. We stand together. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment, letting the weight of that settle. It felt like truth. The outer dome hatch hissed open. Metal boots struck the landing platform. Marcus moved toward the control corridor, Lyanna trailing behind him. They passed the living space in silence, past the soft hum of thermal lights, past the old research stations now housing meals and warmth and signs of life never meant to be seen. By strangers. He stopped by the entry terminal and activated a final override. All right, he said under his breath. Let's meet the future. The inner door unlocked with a pressurized click. A second later, the council delegation entered 4 officials clad in dark carbon silk uniforms, visors gleaming, weapons holstered, but visible. The lead stepped forward tall, pale, efficient. Terraformer Chun, you've triggered a Class A anomaly alert. Your dome reports inconsistencies in population logs, energy consumption, and genetic waste data. Marcus stepped forward calmly. Old equipment. No maintenance ships in 20 months. I've had to run patches myself. The officer scanned him slowly. You were assigned this dome under Protocol 7.8. You understand your rights are limited. I haven't left the boundaries of the dome. I haven't contacted Earth. I haven't interfered with Council operations. I followed my assignment. And yet, the officer said, taking another step forward, our instruments registered 3 heat signatures in your structure this week. One of them a juvenile humanoid, non-human. Marcus didn't flinch. A feral hybrid born from environmental interaction with my botanical splice field. It found the dome injured. I treated it. You treated it. I provided basic medical aid. Not citizenship, not shelter. The officer's face remained blank. It is unlawful to conceal sapient offspring, especially non-registered ones. It isn't sapient. It mimics sound's movement. It feeds. That's it. Lyanna stood still, expression neutral. From behind the quarters, Zara slept, unaware of the world now orbiting around the truth of her existence. I'd like to see it, the officer said. Marcus stepped aside, guiding them down the corridor. His heart thundered in his chest, but his face remained unreadable, controlled the way it had to be. They entered the chamber slowly. Zara lay nestled in the pod, surrounded by bioluminescent flora and the gentle hum of life support. Her skin was cool now, but the faint shimmer of her biolights was visible again, a soft pulse along her collarbone. Officer approached. Marcus tensed, but Zara stirred only slightly. She didn't wake. She was found in Sector C2, Marcus said. Starving sick. No language, no markings. Yet she responds to your voice. She responds to warmth. The officer turned toward Lyanna, who stood several paces away. You are? Marcus answered for her. My assistant. Council-approved caretaker sent from the Southern Relay Dome after my solar array malfunctioned. We filed her transfer. The officer checked his wristpad. No such request existed. I see no record, Marcus shrugged. System's old, relay net's unstable. But I can provide biometric scans. The officer's gaze narrowed. Do so now. Marcus moved to the terminal, pulling up falsified entries he'd spent the last 2 nights coding. Lyanna's ID embedded beneath a deprecated cast entry, just enough corruption to imply redirection errors. It wasn't perfect, but it was believable. The officer took the pad, scanned it, frowned. Then he turned back to Marcus. Terraformer Chun, he said, this structure is under official review. Any confirmed breach of council regulation will result in reassignment, or, if deemed malicious, extraction. Marcus nodded. Understood. The officer paused a moment longer, then turned toward the door. We'll return in 72 hours. And, just like that, they left. Marcus stood still until the outer hatch sealed shut. Then he exhaled long and slow. Behind him, Lyanna trembled not from fear, but from the weight of still being here. They'll come back, she said. I know. They'll dig deeper. I know. She stepped forward, and for the first time, he let his shoulders fall. He leaned into her touch as she placed her hands against his chest. Their foreheads met. We need to formalize the bond, she said quietly. Legally, council law will register it. If I'm your spouse, Zara is your dependent. It'll put me on the record and her off of theirs. Marcus nodded. I'll do it. A beat passed. Are you sure? She asked. He looked at her. I want to raise her, he said. Not because the law demands it. Because she calls me plant keeper and thinks soil worms are funny. And because you, his voice cracked, because you make this place feel like a home. Lyanna's breath shook. Marcus, he silenced her with a kiss. It wasn't desperate. It wasn't defiant. It was real. The dome's interior light shifted with a hour. Outside, the storm front receded into the east, light fracturing across the glass in patterns like broken crystal and sunrise. Later, they would register the bond at the terminal. Later, Marcus would send the falsified paperwork into the council's overburdened network. Later, the law would see them as a family, but in the flower-lit room, with their daughter breathing easily for the first time in days and the world quiet around them, it was already true. No more hiding, no more running. They had chosen one another, and the dome rooted, breathing, alive held them safely in its care.